Meridia, Meridnunda, Lady of Infinite Energies, the false spirit of greed, the orphaned glimmer, and is also known as the Glister Witch, is a Daedric prince whose true principles are not quite known. She governs the spheres of light and the living. Meridia has an extensive and monumental hatred and hostility towards the undead, including ghosts, zombies, draugr, vampires, and so on and so forth. Despite her specific and targeted hatred, she is not considered to be wholly evil, unlike many other Daedric princes, although in some tales she is considered evil, such as in the Iliac Bay. Many folktales tell of her being known as the Daedra Lady of Greed, and possesses a strange and devoted collection of human specimens. Meridia's day of summoning is the 13th of Morning Star. Meridia is associated with energies, whether it is light or the energy of life. Meridia is told to be able to be summoned at her shrines if one offers a fragment of a corpse at her statue. Meridia almost always manifests as a woman, typically with blonde hair, a blue dress or white cloak, and feathered wings outstretched. With her hatred of all things undead, Meridia takes pleasure when mortals destroy her enemies, such as the undead or those who affiliate, such as necromancers. Meridia's primary servants in her plane of oblivion are Aurorans, and even some golden saints. By the detritus of the profane, I am brought forth, and by your offering, you have made the profane your interest, mortal. The undead are foul, unnatural things. Some of my rivals take pleasure in these abominations, not Meridia. I wish these creatures destroyed. A quote from Meridia herself. Meridia is believed to have once been known as Meridnunda, a member of the Magna Gi. The Magna Gi were the divine beings who were disciples and followers of Magnus in the Dawn Era. In Khajiit tales, Magnus is her father, or rather Magrus as known to the Khajiit. In Khajiit folk tales, Magrus did not create his children of the Star Orphans with a mate of sorts. He did so out of forging them out of pure magica from Aetherius. However, in some tales, it is told that Meridnunda was different than her fellow children. She was born without love and only light. In some Khajiit tales, they even blame her for the death of Lorkhaj, or Lorcan. They fled to Aetherius, creating the many stars that are seen in the sky, as their celestial bodies tore through the very membrane of Mundus and Oblivion. The Magna Gi and Magnus fled once they discovered Lorcan's true intentions. Meridnunda, along with her fellow Star Orphans, retreated to Aetherius to prevent themselves from becoming trapped in the mortal plane. However, after safely arriving in Aetherius, upon discovery of Meridnunda's supposed consorts with illicit spectra, presumably Daedra, she was cast out of Aetherius and got caught in the very webbing and void of Oblivion. The other Daedric princes were particularly bothered by Meridnunda's trespass, as they claimed all existing spheres of Oblivion as their own. In Khajiit folklore, it is told that when Meridnunda was discovered in the passage between Mundus to Oblivion and beyond, known as the Gates of the Crossing, Azura struck her and dragged her to a void in Oblivion, and surrounded and trapped her there with mirrors. Although Meridnunda escaped, although it isn't exactly known how. The earliest tales surrounding Meridia, or rather Meridnunda, are some of the strangest and least understood of Nirn's earliest histories. An ancient and fragmented manuscript from the First Era is all that remains that details her life and story as a Magna Gi. Only one copy of this manuscript exists, and it is told to exist at the Arcane University. However, since the disbandment of the Mages Guild, it is not known what has become of this manuscript or the library itself. The difficulty of understanding this manuscript is that it is observed to be a part of a much larger text, or saga of sorts. The only existing bit of it is believed to take place somewhere in the middle of it, leaving out necessary and crucial information about Meridnunda. This ancient document was written in a very cryptic vernacular and speech style observed to be Eleatic, in a Nedic structure of writing. Translating this manuscript is no easy feat, and it involves many words that have not survived into modern language and have unknown origins, as well as no direct or clear translation. The Magnagi were Anuic entities. One of the most famous Magnagi is likely that of Namoli the Blue Star, associated with untime events, whose tear in the membrane of oblivion, or star, was even able to be viewed during daytime, during a dragon break. One phrase from this ancient writing that eludes scholars is, "Thus does Meridnunda ride across the Rainbow Road from end to end, at one end stretching the dragon, at the other end compressing him." This dragon that it refers to is believed to be in reference to Akatosh, the dragon god of time. The Rainbow Road is believed to be a prismatic refraction of light, bent by Meridia herself as she carved out her own plane of oblivion. It is believed by scholars that this suggests that Meridia can somehow change the speed of which time moves, although many scholars deny this theory. To make amends with being trapped in oblivion, she bent the very beams of light of the stars and the sun, forging and carving her own plane of oblivion into the very environment. Meridia's plane of oblivion is known as the Colored Rooms. Meridia, or Meridnunda known to the Aelids, was a part of the Aelidic pantheon. The Aelids worshipped a mixture of Adric and Daedric divinities, although Meridia was among their most favored and praised, as the magic governing the stars and light played an important role in the lives of the Aelids. Meridia embodied the fourth element of light. Despite this, Meridia was responsible for the destruction of the Aelid city of Abagarlis, after the leader of Abagarlis, King Anumaril, ordered for the largest shrine dedicated to Molag Bal to be constructed at Abagarlis. Meridia had informed her worshippers of the neighboring city of Daladil that mainly worshipped her. After a long series of events and clashes between the two Aelid cities, Meridia destroyed Abagarlis in a blast of divine lightning. Meridia is known for having granted immortality to Umaril the Unfeathered, a powerful Aelid king who was the arch-enemy of Pelinal Whitestrake in the First Era. Pelinal had destroyed Umaril with the cost of his own life, and many centuries later during the Oblivion Crisis, Umaril returned, with Aurorans as his servants, to seek retribution from the Divines. Umaril the Unfeathered gave up his own will to achieve immortality, as Meridia possesses this powerful ability. Those who take up this deal are known as the Purified. The Purified, or also known as Lustrants, are mortals who have been purified by Meridia herself. This involves stripping the mortal of their own free will, granting them immortality, and having them be in service to her for eternity. Those who are purified have been observed to have radiant and glowing bodies. Typically, those who become Lustrants are willing, although Meridia has even given this purification to those who are unwilling, and they serve her regardless of their own thought. In some texts, The term lustrance are typically used by Dromora to describe these individuals, but it has been coined as a term used by many. Other than Umaril the Unfeathered, one notable individual who became purified was another Iliad king, King Naramor. Naramor safeguarded an ancient artifact known as the Wrathstone, deep within the Iliad kingdom of Garlus Malatar for 3,000 years. A crusade of Imperials had ventured into this ruin, and upon discovery of this relic, they were all forcibly turned to Lustrance. In the Second Era 583, a treasure hunter named Theraria, assisted by a faction of dungeon dwellers known as the Undaunted, delved into this vast complex of ruins, discovering the ancient horrors that took place in the ruins. Eventually, they were able to fight past the Lustrance, and even Naramor himself. Through their efforts, they were able to retrieve the right half of the Wrathstone, and safely made it out of the ruins. Not only humanoid mortals are able to become the Purified, just about any creature can become one, and these beasts who become purified are known as elevated. Sabercats have been observed to become a part of this. Purified sabercats are told to reside in the colored rooms, in a type of exhibit. Even Daedra are not exempt from being purified. One notable example is when Nocturnal had invaded Meridia's realm, releasing Daedrats into the realm. This invasion was unsuccessful, however, and each Daedrat was collected, purified by Meridia, and cast unto Nirn to carry out their lives as Lustrance. Daedra who serve Molag Bal hold a collected and intense hatred for servants of Meridia, from her mortal subjects to her Daedric servants. There's even a special place in Cold Harbor for these individuals who find themselves in Molag Bal's plane, known as the Lightless Oubliette. The Lightless Oubliette appears to be a strange and dark replica of the White Gold Tower, specifically meant as a prison for Meridia's minions. Mortals call it Dawnbreaker, for it was forged in a holy light that breaks upon my foes, burning away corruption and false life. A quote from Meridia. Meridia has two known artifacts. One is purely hers, and one has a strange shared possession of hers and Mafala's. These artifacts have been in the hands of many throughout the eras. The Dawnbreaker is arguably Meridia's most powerful artifact, forged by Meridia herself, in a holy light that breaks upon her enemies. The Dawnbreaker appears to be a longsword of golden ebony, with a bright and beaming crystal known as the Dawnstar Gem at the center of its crossguard. This sword was created by Meridia to burn away corruption and false life. This sword can be used as a normal sword, although deals an extra magical or fire damage, taking them from the ground even. Although against undead, this sword is catastrophic and disastrous, dealing an especially extra damage against them. This extra damage has also been observed to affect not only undead, but Daedra and those who are werewolves. Occasionally, this sword, upon defeat of an undead foe, will cause an explosion of light and blue fire to the environment, destroying any other undead within range. And those undead who are not destroyed flee in terror. If the wielder of this blade is undead, such as a vampire, this fiery explosion will also cause harm to them. Although this sword can be used against any enemy if needed, it holds the most use against undead enemies, and some warriors have been proven to deal more damage against living foes by using more mundane weapons. Dawnbreaker appears to hold a unique enchantment known as Meridia's Retribution. On a more technical level, and ironically, this enchantment works similarly to a soul trap enchantment, in that it affects the target for 10 whole seconds. During the plane meld in the Second Era, to combat the dark anchors planted on Tamriel by Molag Bal, the Fighters Guild was dispatched often to destroy the anchors. The highest ranking of these Fighters Guild members were even able to summon the Dawnbreaker during battle to help them in their battles against the undead and Daedra. A Breton man named Darien Gaudier, during the plane meld, was known as Meridia's champion and her vessel. Darien had died, but was resurrected within the colored rooms. Upon his return, he utilized the Dawnbreaker in his battle in the Somerset Isles against the court of Bedlam, a powerful and dangerous cult that followed the triad of Clavicus Vile, Mephala, and Nocturnal. Eventually, the Dawnbreaker was lost from his possession, and the Heart of Transparent Law, the very source of power for the Crystal Tower, was stolen by Nocturnal. Nocturnal changed and revised the very power of Dawnbreaker to gift it to her champion, Earl Tundilwyn. This new sword became known as Duskbringer. Tundilwyn utilized Duskbringer during the clash that occurred within Crystal Tower. However, with the Vestige's help, Darien was able to defeat her. As Meridia's only hope and champion, he took his own life as sacrifice in order to remove the curse placed on the sword by Nocturnal and restore it from the corrupted Duskbringer to the once again holy sword of Dawnbreaker. The Vestige aided against Nocturnal's forces by taking the now restored sword, climbing the rest of the tower to stab the sword within the Heart of Transparent Law. This caused the holy power of the sword to cleanse and purify the heart, removing the corruption placed upon it by Nocturnal, saving the Somerset Isles from the Triad. The Sword of Dawnbreaker hadn't been seen again for many centuries after the events of the Second Era. That is, until after the Great War of the Fourth Era, in the 180th year. A hero known as the Warrior, who was once a member of the Blades, had discovered the Dawnbreaker on their journey. The method of how they discovered it isn't quite known. Some say it was found in a mysterious plane of oblivion known as the Abyss, while other sources state it was possibly looted from a chest at a different, undisclosed location. Later in the Fourth Era, around 20 years later, the sword had eventually taken its place within the Temple of Meridia in Skyrim, at Mount Kilcreath. A Breton necromancer named Malkaran had profaned the temple within with undead, using the bodies of fallen warriors of the Civil War to trap their souls and use as his minions. The Dawnbreaker fueled his magic, infuriating Meridia. Meridia, in order to stop this, allowed the last Dragonborn to discover her beacon, a tool that she used as a means to communicate with the last Dragonborn. They took this beacon to her temple, in which she contacted them through a beam of holy light. The last Dragonborn was given the task of cleansing her temple with her light, and in the end defeating Malkaran and taking the Dawnbreaker as a reward for their efforts. Another artifact of Meridia that also shares possession with Mephala, strangely, is the Ring of Khajiit, or sometimes simply known as Ring of Khajiit. This ring allows the user to become invisible, stealthy, and speedy. The origins of this ring date back to the Second Era. This ring is highly sought after by thieves, and can be useful to those who need to escape a sour situation in a stealthy manner. Mephala is told to be the original possessor of this ring, although a powerful Khajiit named Rajan stole it from her very hand. Rajan eventually became a god to the Khajiit after using the power of the ring to carry out grand larceny undetected. With the power of the ring, Rajan became the most acclaimed thief in Elsewhere in history. Rajan was somehow even able to steal a tattoo from the neck of Empress Kintira as she slumbered. However, Rajan became too powerful to even wield the ring any longer, and it is told that the ring abandoned Rajan. In the book titled Tamrielic Lore, it is suggested that this ring abandons those who overuse its immense power. It had grown tiresome of its constant use and abuse, and disappeared from Rajan's possession, leaving him crumbled, exposed, weakened, and helpless to those who were his enemies, and searching for him. This tale also suggests that the ring is somehow sentient, although it is not known in what way, whether related to Meridia's power or Mephalah's. Although many Daedric artifacts behave in this way, as well as Aedric ones. Because of this tale is more than likely true. It is not known how this ring became a shared artifact to Meridia, however, but by the Third Era 405, she had offered it as a reward to the agent after they defeated a sorcerer who betrayed her. However, around 20 years later, this artifact had gone back into the possession of Mephalah, who offered it as a reward to the Nerevarine after they defeated a member of the Morag Tong who had gone rogue and began killing individuals who were not on designated writs. Once again, 6 years later, the ring had returned to Meridia's possession and was given as a reward to the Champion of Cyrodiil after they purified a cave of necromancers for Meridia. It is not known what the current status of the ring is, whether it is in Meridia's possession or Mephalah's, or anyone else's is unknown. Meridia's Plane of Oblivion is known as the Colored Rooms, shaped and constructed by Meridia, as she had gotten trapped in Oblivion as a Magna Gi. Not much is known about her plane, but it has been described as a vast realm of coral reefs, floating stones, and colorful waters decorated with colorful streams of dust and clouds. The colorful and bright water that makes up the terrain of her plane appears as phosphorescent water, but is a surface that is sturdy enough to walk on. Aurorans reside in this realm, mounted upon their war horses. The Aurorans are told to be comprised of pure light of Meridia, and their true skin tones can come in just about any color. Golden Saints are also told to make their home in this realm. During Alessia's rebellion in the First Era, the Ayleids communed with Meridia, and with a pact created between her and her minions of Aurorans, they were able to fight back with force against the humans. However, even with Daedric powers such as this, their forces were still outmatched by the power of the human rebels, Morehouse and Pelinal Whitestrake. Umaril the Unfeathered, the king of the Ayleids, bound his very life force to the Colored Rooms. Upon his death in Mundus, his soul returned to the Colored Rooms, marinating in the waters of Oblivion. Darien Gaudier had spent thousands of years being reborn within the Colored Rooms before he could make his eventual return to Mundus. He had been relocated to the Colored Rooms after a confrontation with Molag Bal in the Planar Vortex. Meridia had transferred him in a magical beam of light shone upon him. The Vestige had defeated Molag Bal in his Plane of Oblivion in Cold Harbor, and Molag Bal had admitted defeat, and the plane meld was over in the Second Era 582. The next year, in the Second Era 583, Darien reappeared in Mundus, known as Meridia's Golden Knight. Eventually, Mephala abducted him, and the triad of Clavicus Vile, Nocturnal, and Mephala had invaded into the plane of Meridia, the Colored Rooms. Meridia manifested in Coldharbour as the groundskeeper. She spoke to the Vestige about aiding them to reobtain their soul. Meridia was able to dismantle and destroy the last dark anchor during the plane meld, bringing it to an end. She shielded the Vestige and their allies from Molag Bal as they were preparing her holy light to be released. In some tales, Meridia is hinted as being deceptive and manipulative. An imperial settlement that was once devoted to Meridia was even discarded by her herself into the plane of Molag Bals, although this was in an act to weaken Molag Bal, and many of those who resided there were killed or kidnapped after this. According to her own champion, Darien, she promised him freedom, but used him as a tool to dispose of her enemies. Darien lost himself in the void and darkness. Deep within the ruins of an Ayleid city on the Gold Coast of Cyrodiil, Meridia had enslaved a number of humans, transforming them into lustrants. After she lost Darien as her champion, out of pure rage, she killed an innocent Khajiit named Jasad, who was in a trance caused by her. Despite Meridia usually being considered benevolent or non-evil compared to many other Daedric princes, her worshippers are few and far between. While she was a part of the pantheon of the Ayleids, and some of her biggest adorers were the Ayleid kings Umaril, Dainar, and Narelmor. A once high-ranking member of the Fighters Guild, Caesal Colors, worshipped her. A Khajiit disciple named Mesad Dro, and even an elderly and insane soul-shriven man named Sir Cadwell, as well as her very champion Darien Gaudier. Many high elves who resided in the Somerset Isles were also told to worship her, although they were completely wiped out by worshippers of the Triad, the Court of Bedlam. The Vestige also had a brief encounter with Meridia at her statue in Etonir Grotto in the Somerset Isles. She requested the Vestige to save her champion Darien, using the Dawnstar gem from the Dawnbreaker to locate him. Mephala had abducted him, and to rescue him, the Vestige had to travel to Mephala's realm in order to save him. However, Nocturnal interrupted this communion, and the statue of Meridia was observed to weep purple blood. After the victory against Molag Bal, the Vestige had teleported to the Colored Rooms, in which Meridia bestowed them their once-lost soul, along with a fallen companion soul being imbued into their own. Molag Bal had materialized in a weakened and defeated form. He spoke of the Vestige's power and prowess, and admitted defeat. However, he warned the Vestige of attracting the attention of the other Daedric princes, and that the inner machinations and politics of Oblivion were not for mortals' comprehension or interference. Meridia dispelled Molag Bal from her realm, and after one last sneer, he was banished. Other than Umaril the Unfeathered, one of Meridia's most devoted and cherished worshippers was the Ayleid king Narelmor. He dedicated his very life and city to the worship of her. At the very peak of his reign, Meridia considered him a favorite of hers, alongside that of Umaril. One of the biggest examples of evidence to this is a supposed immense beacon of light that was seen from the city of Garlus Malatar, fueled by Meridia. This light became known as the Guiding Light, and while the White Gold Tower outscaled this beacon, it is told that its light was even able to be seen from Yokuda. The Ayleid city of Garlus Malatar was a prosperous city in its time, an important trading hub and port city for the Aelids. Unlike many Aelidic cities, this city in particular was welcoming to those from neighboring cities, as long as they obeyed Meridian law. To deviate from or break Meridian law was horrendously punished. The most infamous example of punishment was Narumor executing the ruler of a neighboring city who didn't pay significant enough homage to Meridia when he visited the city. Despite his strictness governing Meridian law, those who were under his rule viewed him as a righteous and honorable ruler. One thing of observation in the popular book titled On Oblivion, a book detailing the Daedric princes and Oblivion itself, Meridia is not mentioned. However, a former Daedric prince, Jyggalag, is. Despite her being untrustworthy in some tales, Meridia is observed to hold more Anuic qualities that are observed in Aedra and other Adata, more so than Daedric. Meridia is not observed to hold any hostility to mortals or Nirn, and is often capable of assisting mortals when the time is needed, especially when it's facing those who wish to profane or corrupt the living or the dead. Imperials who greatly worship the Imperial Divines acknowledge Meridia for her being able to speak fairly to mortals without direct hostility or with obvious ill intentions. However, many Imperials know Meridia as the leader of their ancient enemy, the Aelids, and do not wish to acknowledge her as a worthy deity of worship, along with the rest of the Daedric princes, no matter how innocent or benevolent they may seem. A large stone fortress in eastern Skyrim, known as Direfrost Keep, was home to an ancient Nordic bloodline who, with a powerful flame, were able to contact long-lost loved ones who resided in Sovngarde. The Direfrost flame, as it can be called, was protected by this ancient family of Nords, and this flame, if it went out, had to be relit by the next patriarch of the clan, utilizing a torch known as the Torch of Airs. Some legends regarding this connection between Sovngarde and the Immortal Plane specifically mention Meridia, using it to distress enemy Daedra. However, more tales allude to Shor using this as a beacon of communication after his death between Sovngarde and the Nords of Nirn. Although the Direfrost clan has never expressed communicating with neither Shor nor Meridia through these means. Meridia's primary Daedric servants are that of Aurorans. Aurorans are typically clad in pure golden armor, decorated with horns and feathery motifs. These Daedra are told to be Meridia's spawn, and their bodies are made of pure light. Although Aurorans typically manifest as golden knights, they can change the color of their armor and tone at will, and can spawn as virtually any hue. This magic can also be used to bend light to their will, or to assist them in battle. They typically utilize shock-based spells alongside their formidable weapons in battle. They hold a resistance against magic as well. Their weapons are often infused with lightning. They often attack in a phalanx battle formation in order to channel the magic of light and lightning to combat their enemies. Among Daedra, Aurorans are observed to be conceited and pretentious, although they do not have an organized hierarchy. Although Aurorans can control light to their will, they can seemingly only utilize light from the shades of yellow and white, but blue light or even open flames are of no use to them. Aurorans are similar to another Daedra in service to Meridia, Aureals, also commonly known as Golden Saints. These two races of Daedra, despite both being in service to Meridia, are known to have a severe hatred for each other During his time within the Colored Rooms, Darien Gautier was accompanied by Golden Saints. Aurorans side with no other Daedra, unless they specifically are in service to Meridia. Darien, although mortal, shared similarities with that of Aurorans, in that he was forged from Meridia's light. When Aurorans are within the vicinity of a dark orb, strange orbic relics found within the depths of Malatar, Meridia uses these orbs as a source of power to the Aurorans, healing them, resurrecting them, and even preventing their banishment back to oblivion. Dark orbs emanating different spectrums of light can give the respective colored Aurorans certain powers. Those who greatly worship Meridia often fashion themselves in golden armor, that of Aurorans. This golden armor can be crafted utilizing dust collected from Aurorans. During the Alessian Rebellion, the Nedic rebels referred to the Aurorans as Thundernox, as the Ayleids greatly used the Aurorans against the Needs. Umrael the Unfeathered, when he became purified, took on that of a much larger and more powerful Auroran of sorts. When the excavation occurred, led by Theraria at the Ayleidic ruins of Garlus Malatar, they had to fight a variety of powerful Aurorans. King Narelmore's mortal body perished. Although with his pact he made with Meridia, he was resurrected as an incredibly powerful Auroran known as a Symphony of Blades. During the Third Era, Umrael returned once again. His League of Aurorans slaughtered citizens of various Aedric chapels across Cyrodiil. In Garlus Malatar, once the dark orbs were shattered, the Aurorans froze in time and died without the energy given to them from the dark orbs. Scintillating Aurorans are a type of Auroran that comes in a purplish hue. These specific ones were especially noted in the depths of Malatar, powered by the dark orbs. These Aurorans supplied the Symphony of Blades with power. Radiant Aurorans appear to be a normal Auroran, but are sometimes much more brighter and ethereal in appearance than a normal Auroran. In Malatar, these were the first to be called upon in battle. These Aurorans are noted for their ability to quickly regenerate their health. Phosphorescent Aurorans are an Auroran of blue hues. Their powers are quite similar to that of radiant Aurorans, in that they regenerate their health rather quickly, although they have been observed to be able to summon a pillar of ice. Blazing Aurorans are a fierce type of Auroran with a red hue. They also hold the power of speedy health regeneration. These multicolored Aurorans, while in the depths of Malatar, were specifically summoned to aid Narelmore in battle, although these kinds of Aurorans haven't been encountered outside of this event in history, and it isn't quite known how common these specific hues are in the Colored Rooms. Aurorans, while they typically manifest as a knight, have also been known to manifest as powerful mages. Aurorans of all the Daedra have been noted to be rare, and typically only appear when it involves that of Meridia. Similarly to Meridia, Aurorans can control light and color, specifically to themselves. However, Auroran Twilight warhorses are pitch black as night. This is because these war mounts are typically utilized at dark by the Aurorans. Aurorans have been observed to be able to summon these as mounts, even when on the mortal plane. However, if the Auroran perishes and is sent back to the Colored Rooms to reform, the warhorse mysteriously remains. I need to tell you something about Meridia. She's a deceiver. She promised that if I served her faithfully, I'd earn my freedom. She never told me that freedom was just another word for the void. Don't trust her. Don't trust any of the Daedric princes. Not ever. I found peace, though. Meridia gave me a chance to see the world, and those I care about, one last time. To save those I loved. I'm grateful for that, at least. A quote from Darien Gautier, Meridia's champion. Meridia's primary goal as a Daedric prince isn't quite known. While she governs that of light and the energies of living things, her goals are usually one thing and one thing only: the total destruction of all things undead. Why Meridia holds such a specific animosity for all things undead is not fully understood. While many mortals also consider undead abominations, Meridia is by far the dominant advocate of this ideology. As much as her origins are clouded, so too are Meridia's intentions. And whether she is an ally or truly righteous Daedric prince to the mortals of Nirn is unclear.